Hi Sonoma County, it is Friday evening, October 23rd, and I am in Paris, France, where I've been the last 2 days, and it's the final city on my official Marshall Memorial Fellowship tour, and today was the sort of final day of official back-to-back meetings and learning, and actually we round out our fellowship tomorrow with a trip to Normandy, so I've heard that's a pretty eye-opening experience, and we'll report on that at another time. But just wanted to sort of bring you up to speed on what's been happening here in Paris and in France, and I think two really big sort of learnings for me so far. One has just been really the attachment and sense of what it means to be French and to live in France, and sort of this idea of the culture and how integrated and important that is to everyone that really lives here. And so you really get a sense of it, whether it's the food and the wine, which I think we know some of that. I've experienced some of that back home, but in sort of their education to their cities. So that's kind of one takeaway, and the other takeaway is just sort of where they're at right now in terms of sort of the global marketplace and vying for position both globally and within the European Union. And it was actually said in an interesting conversation that right now Germany, since it's so financially, economically strong in the EU, that they really do drive the decisions of the European Union, and it's just kind of interesting to think about. So France has actually been experiencing a downturn in their economy, and their unemployment rate is around 10%, and so a lot of the conversations are focused on trade, TTIP being a big one when you think about the EU overall, and how the French feel about the standards and trading, security, privacy, digital security, all when it comes to sort of working through a trade agreement with the US. So our meetings here have ranged from everything from kicking off at the US Embassy yesterday morning, to meeting with the mayor's office of Paris, to talking about migration and the immigrant issue, whether that's African American, Roma, the Muslim community here, and what's going on with all of those different communities, and how they're being integrated or not integrated into sort of the society and culture here. Two meetings really stuck out for me that I just wanted to share with you. The first one was with the president of Sciences Po, which is a leading research university here in France, and actually attracts a lot of international students, one of the top universities. And I think about how rarely probably would a president of a university, besides Santa Rosa Junior College or Sonoma State, so our local favorites, how they would be willing to sort of take time with a group of sort of visitors, but this gentleman took about an hour and a half with us. And the really interesting thing for this university was their focus on having a different admissions process for low-income and immigrant sort of potential students. And so they actually have a more oral admissions process versus focusing on sort of the grades and the test scores. So they actually allocate spaces every year for some of the lower income students to join the university. And then they also provide special tutoring and sort of a special track to ensure that once they're here, they're getting the extra help they need to be successful. We asked sort of, at some point from a success rate, do you see more or less sort of failure, success with these lower income students that come in, and he said, they sort of had the exact same rate of sort of dropping out, getting jobs as the other population of the school, and so they really do matriculate in and become part of the community and achieve the sort of the same level of success as the other students. And so the one stat that he presented that was really fascinating was that they just did a research study that 95% of their students 15 years after school are still employed. And so that's a pretty high employment rate for their specific students 15 years after school. And most of the students there go through what would be a 3-year sort of undergraduate equivalent program, and then a 2-year graduate degree, master's degree program. So they take 5 years, and most of them graduate with a 5-year sort of graduate level degree. So interesting conversation there, a lot of great learning. The other really probably the best conversation I had in Paris was we ended our day today meeting with a couple of entrepreneurs. So around Europe, we've heard sort of that the plight of innovation and entrepreneurship is really quite low, that innovation's low, that folks are very risk adverse, that there's a culture to not being an entrepreneur. It's almost a bad word. And France has really had a revival or a start. As they said, it rivals Silicon Valley. I'm not sure if they're there yet, but really focused on entrepreneurship and startup businesses. And so they've actually, the gentleman we spoke to were part of early incubators that help support sort of entrepreneurs, where you could come, you could sort of use office space for free, and then they'd have social interactions every night where you could meet other entrepreneurs. The most interesting thing, though, as we dug into these conversations with these two entrepreneurs, was the safety net that the government actually provides here for folks that want to start companies and take that risk. And so, if you want to, and you want to start a company, and you file for sort of the legal entity, an LLC or whatever that corporation might be, you actually get paid half your salary for 2 years, so you can find out if your company is actually going to be successful. That, combined with universal health care, actually makes taking that initial risk quite attractive. In addition to that, there's a completely different tax structure for sort of the larger corporations than there are startup companies. So it's much better. Folks are saying if you want to get rich in France, you don't go anymore become some leader in a big company. And in fact, to become a millionaire in France, you need to start your own business. And a lot of them actually don't even want to be acquired. The dream is to start the business and to run it and to be successful. And maybe you leave it and continue owning shares, but move on to another company. So it was a pretty inspiring story as a way to end our official meetings here in Paris. With a lot of hope for sort of new ideas and innovation coming out of France, which should really help with their sort of unemployment and economic situation and position over the long run, but just encouraging for the first time, really since traveling around Europe, to hear that there's a real push for innovation, a push for entrepreneurship, and what I call, what we all know at home is sort of living the American dream and having that opportunity to at least try and hopefully succeed, but at least try to have something that you really care about and are passionate about. So today's official Global Champagne Day, so I'm off to dinner in a few minutes, and we'll be toasting all of you back home with a glass of champagne to celebrate that and the ending of our official program here in Paris. So lots of great learning to bring home. I actually have meetings with the French Growers Association on Monday, and then I'm headed to do some meetings and visits with some of our friends in Champagne next week during the week, and we know they made a big push towards sustainable farming, so it'll be interesting to learn what they're doing and how they're talking about their sustainable farming practices in Champagne. So more to come on all of that. Miss all of you guys and women back at home. It's been a great trip so far, and it's just been a lot of learning and hard to actually process everything I'm learning, so I'm sure a lot more insights to come. So hope you're all doing well. Cheers to all of you. We'll talk to you soon.